Welcome to the Help We Need podcast, where we explore topics that empower women and support their well being. I'm your host, Fumike Morunkeji, and today we are tackling a topic that is very well known and considered a game changer for so many of us women out there, and that is salary negotiations. In the first part of this series, we discussed the basics in terms of what you need to do in order to be positioned to get you ready for when it's time to discuss a salary upgrade for yourself with your boss, your manager, or your employer. If you have not listened to that episode, stop and go back to listen to the tips shared because it sets a good foundation for your success on this interesting and very important topic that impacts your career and your progress at work. In today's episode, I will be sharing some insights and strategies that will take you to step 2. And that is assisting you to confidently take the salary negotiation discussion another step further. So, baby steps. First step, we get grounded. We understand what it is to even have the conversation. We've done that already in our first episode. So, this episode now is what do we need to do next? So, in this I Am Ready, Yes Scenario episode, we'll be discussing some preparation tips to get you started. So, I hope you're ready. Get your pencil, get whatever you need to jot if you can, pay attention, and hopefully these tips are relevant to your current situation and are helpful for you to move on. So our first tip is research and benchmarking. So it goes without saying, right? And we spoke about this sometime earlier, where it's important to constantly look at the markets, understand what's going on within the industry. But this time it's because the trends are changing. So what you knew last year doesn't necessarily factor into what is relevant for this year because things keep moving, the market is evolving. So it's important to, when at least you're ready to have that conversation, to gather information, on the market value for your role within the industry that you're working on. And another important thing is to identify the salary range. It's typical for your level of experience because you're going to be talking to your manager, you're going to be talking about your position, you're going to be speaking to what you've done, how you've evolved, the job scope has expanded, what have you. I mean, you are best positioned to speak to what you've done, what you're doing. And obviously, the purpose of having the discussions around salary negotiations or discussions is you want an increase because you believe right now that you're not being paid for the value you're bringing to the job. So understanding what is being paid is common sense, right? It goes without saying. So if you're saying you're not being paid, you need to justify where the differentials are coming from and where the gap is coming from. So if you're able to cite these relevant data within these industries, whatever information that would substantiate the rationale or the justification for you wanting an increase, I think it's important that you own that information in a way that you're able to communicate it and it's reasonable and it's food for thought, right? That gets your employer, that gets your manager, supervisor thinking to say, okay, let me take a look at that and probably get back to you. So that's really, really important. You need to know what's happening out there and you need to be able to speak to it in a way that it's food for thought. Your manager reflects on it and hopefully the conversation is taken, to the next step and it works out for you. Another important tip is organize your achievements. So we spoke in our first episode around keeping, track record of what you're doing, because as women, there's a tendency that we, these things sleep, we get to forget, and we're just buried in the job and we're just moving on. So the practicality of this is you need to create a concise list of your recent successes, your skills, the contributions that you're making that demonstrates your value. And these are not just fluffy stuffs, right? Like just speaking, talking, and there's no justification for anything. You just, I do my job well. Other people say I'm doing a great job. I'm excellent in what that doesn't speak to anything. So focusing on measurable results. So if you're within the commercial space or the finance space, or you're doing something around marketing, I mean, you know what you do, but being able to tie your achievements to sales. So I increased sales by this percentage, profits rose by this percentage. I led successful projects that gained more revenue for the company. Maybe the project was XYZ. You need to be able to connect what you're doing to measurable outcomes that translate to return on investments. So when we are talking about success, when we're speaking to achievements, this needs to really stand out because your manager is listening to you and they're kind of gauging your relevance in this role. It's almost like they cannot afford to lose you. So being able to call out the things that you're doing that it's making a difference, the things that you're doing that is generating, whether it's in terms of quality, whether it's in terms of service, whether it's in terms of time, that in a way is connected to the reputation of the organization. Maybe it could be in terms of branding. Maybe it's connected to saving money for the organization. Because for some of us who are not necessarily in the functions that are driving revenue per se, it doesn't mean that, oh, we need to throw in the towel and the battle is lost for us. Not at all. But we're doing certain things to support. And in supporting, we are also helping the cost generating functions to meet their targets. So your ability to connect what you're doing with how that translates to ROI in terms of the time savings, cost containment, what have you, is really, really very important. So from that perspective, it's important that you yourself do the homework and you create that list of your recent successes, the skills that you have that is highly competitive, and the contributions that is demonstrating the value that you're making or giving to the organization. So that's the first tip. The second tip is practice your pitch. So I know most times when we think about having the conversations, we just, set up the meeting and that's it. But the best way to play this out is to rehearse. So if you have someone trusted, maybe a spouse, maybe a sibling, a trusted person that you could have those conversations with so that you model how you would present it in a confident and professional way, that would be a very good idea. And if you don't have anybody, you can use your mirror at home with your talking points to kind of build the assertiveness and the confidence that you need. Because once you play it over and over and over again, you kind of indirectly drive that confidence, boost that confidence within yourself, and you already know what you're going to say. And also using clear, assertive language to state your value and the desired salary. Fluffy words, stay away from fluffy words, stay away from hyperboles, exaggerated. You have to have your facts straight. And you need to talk in a way that you are communicating that fact. And that kind of links back to your I would say proposal for the desired salary or the increase that you're asking for. Now, another important thing is read the moment. You need to choose the right time to have the conversation. I know you may have planned, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But if you walk into the room or into the meeting and you are able to tell that your manager is troubled, they're not really focused, they're a bit distracted, there's nothing bad in saying, check in and saying, could this not be the right time? Are you comfortable to continue? I sense that you're a bit, there's something on your mind. Are you comfortable? Just check, because, in the long run, it's to your advantage to make sure that your manager is paying attention, in the right frame of mind, the right mood. And even if it's not within the setup of just that first meeting where you're reading and understanding the body language, but just generally, what's the tone within the organization at the point you want to have this conversation? What's happening in the organizational space? So when would be the right time to have that conversation. So timing is key, and you need to align your negotiation, obviously, with your performance reviews, or after a major accomplishment. So you've just done performance reviews, your manager is happy with the work you're doing. That's the best time to have this conversation, because they're very happy, and they're pleased. Or when there's a major accomplishment and it stands out, obviously that is, the moment to have this conversation. So preparing ahead, like I said, is always very helpful, because sometimes these things happen on the spur of the moment, and you could seize that moment to have that conversation. So it's important you are already thinking about this. It's important that in your mind you're shaping those conversations, so that when it could be sporadic, it happens, you can speak quickly to it. But the essence of us planning and prepping is that you are planning for the meeting, it's calculated, and your manager understands you want to have a conversation, around the subject. But these are moods, these are circumstances that set the conversation in your favor. So don't forget to do that. And then the next, I think the next important tip is to prepare for objections, right? So you shouldn't expect that when you come into the conversation, the manager is just going to absorb everything that you're going to say. It's going to be fine. The scenario is going to be pitch perfect. No. Think ahead of possible roadblocks, potential concerns that your manager might raise or your supervisor might call out. And that's why it's always good to observe the pulse within the organization, what's going on with the department, so you can plan ahead that possibly this may be said, and you have responses to be able to speak to it. It goes without saying. So you're not just taking, it's sudden and it kind of rattles you, and that just completely derails the objective of you having the conversation. So when you're faced with resistance, you plan to face it, so that you are prepped to say things that would probably help clarify or further reinforce your points. Or maybe like we said, it's a negotiation, right? So you could suggest ways to meet halfway. Maybe now is not the right timing. There's a current change, budget is low, what have you. And it could be milestones for future raises, the next opportunity, what that looks like, or even using that as a benchmark to kind of leverage development assignments for yourself, travel opportunities for learning, for secondment assignments. And I know sometimes when we talk about salary negotiations, most times our minds shift towards the salary increase and the raise. But when things are kind of, tipping towards this is not the right time, there are other avenues that you could explore to kind of position you for the next opportunity. So it's important to have that at the back of your mind in terms of what those other suggestions that would equally, if it's not really meeting your goal, but it would equally substantiate and maybe, in the long term, support your overall objective. Think about what that looks like so that you can suggest that, when the opportunity avails itself. So I hope this episode has been helpful. As we conclude this enlightening discussion, I hope today's episode has boosted your confidence a bit more and it's created a thirst for some constructive and productive action on your part. Remember, salary negotiation is more than just a conversation about numbers. It's a statement of self-worth and your push for equity, paying you for what you're worth, paying you for the work that you do. So whether you're entering your first salary negotiation or you're advocating for yourself at the peak of your career, remember this: you bring immense value to the table. You deserve to be compensated accordingly. You need to say this to yourself and you need to believe it for what it truly is. So equip yourself with knowledge, lean on your allies, and never underestimate the power of your voice, the power of speaking up. So let's keep the momentum going. Subscribe to this channel to help us expand our reach and support the efforts that we are putting into creating content and maintaining our episodes for your enrichment. Don't forget to share this episode with a woman or lady you know might benefit from it. Get them to subscribe as well to this channel, and together, let's make salary negotiation a tool for empowerment and change. Thank you for listening to the Help We Need podcast. Stay tuned in for more episodes on living your best lives. And until next time, stay empowered and remember to empower